Good morning. My name is Miranda Wagner, the agricultural conservationist with the Sherburne County Soil and Water Conservation District. And today we're out in the field talking about planting green. And I will pass it over for more introductions.
Hello everyone, my name is Jackie Estrem. I'm a local educator in Stearns, Benton, Morrison, and Sherburne counties with the University of Minnesota Extension. My focus area is sustainable agriculture and crops.
Good morning, my name is Kiel Golly. I farm in Sherburne County, and most of my farms are in Clear Lake and Becker, Minnesota.
All right, so first we'll talk a little bit about the planting green that's happening today. We'll start off with Kyle. What crop are we planting into?
We are planting into a rye, strictly just straight rye cover crop, previous soybeans, and planting corn into it.
Awesome, very cool. So when you planted this, as you can see, this is kind of short rye that we're planting into. I guess my first question is, do you care about how tall your rye is when you're planting? And my second question is, we'll start with that. Do you care how tall your rye is?
I don't know as if I've been doing it long enough to know an exact answer on that. I probably 8 to 12 inches or less, just simply because the ground doesn't supply enough water in this area to supply the rye and a crop going into it. It uses the water too fast. So I think my best answer is 8 inches or less.
Excellent. And then how did you do for planting date, planting rates last fall?
Last fall, I believe I planted in late October, and I believe I planted at 50 pounds to the acre.
Excellent. Excellent. How do you feel about this stand? Do you think it came up all right?
You know, it's spotty. This winter was tough on the rye crops, and I'm okay with it. It came up better this spring than I expected it to. A lot of it kind of just lay dormant over the winter. This spring, when it kind of warmed up, there was almost no germination, so it kind of lay dormant over the winter and started growing this spring. So I think I'm happy for the most part how it germinated and came up.
Kyle, why did you decide to try planting green? What was that number one reason?
I don't know as if I have an exact answer, or I watched a lot of videos and I just wanted to try it, I guess. Maybe the best thing is Dad's got family down in central Iowa that they do a lot of cover crop, and it seems as though a lot of stuff from down central Iowa moves its way up here eventually. And with it's kind of just me and my father for the most part, and he's getting up to the age where he's starting to slowly retire, maybe. So he kind of does most of my tillage, and we wanted a way to get tillage out of the practice eventually, if possible. So,
and when you are doing a rye cover crop, you have that fall coverage if it germinates
Yes.
before the snow comes. Then you've had spring cover out here with the rye, so you've hopefully have had less soil erosion on this really, really windy spring.
Yes, that is a major thing that I've noticed is I do still do some conventional tillage. I'm not 100% changed over yet. But that is a huge thing that I noticed. A couple things that I noticed: the wind erosion, the soil erosion from a runoff erosion. Weed suppression is one thing that I've noticed in some fields. The rye is easier to terminate, and it seems to suppress some weeds that are harder to terminate.
Yeah.
And then those are kind of, I guess, the major benefits I think that I've noticed.
So, and with some of those things, you're decreasing the amount of diesel you're using. You're decreasing the wear and tear on equipment maintenance if you're not using the equipment.
Correct.
And then hopefully you're cutting down on chemical costs. If you're able
Yes.
to eventually reduce the amount of herbicide that you're using with weed suppression.
Correct. I'm slowly working towards the chemical chemistry and how it all works. I'm kind of newer at it,
Mm-hmm.
so I have noticed that a little bit less in the chemistry program is helping, I
Yeah.
guess. So, um,
Have you had any issues with nitrogen in the spring when you're planting corn into a green rye?
um, I don't know as if I want to call it an issue.
Okay. Something you had to
Um,
pay attention to?
yes, something that I I don't put on a lot of starter up front. So the little bit that is there, you can maybe say that the rye uses it before and some people may say that that is an issue. But I also put on a fair amount of nitrogen right after emergence. I feel as though not putting a bunch before it germinates. Um, in the sandy soils here in Sherburne County, if we get a lot of rain up front, I feel as though that starter that I put on may get down further than it can reach. So
Yeah.
I try to wait to put a lot more on that's readily available for the plant once the corn emerges.
Yep. And in the conservation world, one of the reasons that we like cereal rice so much is its ability to scavenge nitrogen.
Yes.
So it is going to take nitrogen, and as it decomposes, it's going to tie up nitrogen for a little while, but then it will eventually release it back into the soil.
Quickly about the rotation that you're using. So right now we're going corn into cereal rye. Why did you choose that rotation, and what are some things that you've learned from other rotations or other practices that you've done in past years?
The best answer I can give to that is I just use a spinner spreader to spread the rye, and the rye seems to take better with the soybean residue on top of the ground. I struggle getting an establishment on corn stubble for the spring of the year. So I think that's until I get a way to establish cereal rye into corn stubble. That really is the only reason I do it right now.
But it's something that works for your system, and that's really what's important. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I haven't had any issues yet, but I do know that it is something that I have to pay attention to.
Yes. Welcome back to the Sherburne SWCD podcast in 2025. And today we are talking about planting green with UM Extension, Bailey and Jackie. Bailey, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Bailey Tangen. I'm a University of Minnesota Extension educator focused on soil health and water resources. So I work with farmers and ag professionals to help them with reduced tillage or using cover crops, different ways to protect the soil and protect their profitability.
Fun.
Oh, so
And
I forgot to say I'm based in the Farmington office, but I do have a statewide role, so you may see me around the state.
Excellent. I'm Jackie Estrem. I'm a local University of Minnesota Extension educator, so I cover Stearns, Benton, Morrison, and Sherburne counties. Just like the other three educators in my area, I have a kind of a little special focus area, and that's sustainable agriculture, soil health, and water quality. My
Thanks, Jackie.
office is in
Oh,
Elk River.
go ahead. Go ahead. Say that again.
My office is in Elk River.
And again, my name is Miranda Wagner. I'm the agricultural conservationist with the Sherburne Soil and Water Conservation District in Elk River. And so, what is planting green?
Mm.
I feel like this is the new buzzword of 2025 is planting.
Yeah, it's a hot topic, right? Basically, it's planting your cash crop into a standing, living cover crop. So rather than having a cover crop and terminating it 2 weeks before you plant your cash crop, you would be planting directly into that standing cover crop.
And what is that cover crop usually?
Oh, yeah. Typically, we see this practice being done with cereal rye.
Okay. And why are we doing this?
really important to protect that soil year round. And with a lot of the crops that we grow in the landscape, we leave the soil bare in the times of the year when the soil is most vulnerable to these heavy rainfall events that we get in the spring and in the fall. And so by keeping the ground covered and not leaving it bare even for that 2 week gap, you can really protect your soil and keep the organic matter in place, which in the long run has really huge benefits for your profitability and productivity of your soils.
Anything to add, Jackie?
Really had a really strong answer, so I think I'll leave it at that for the time being.
I think what I would add is it's not just water erosion too. It's wind erosion. If
Mm,
you driven around Sherburne County, the sand does blow in the spring, and so again, it's that vulnerable and very critical time of year where your soil, your topsoil will blow, and we don't have as much of it in Sherburne County. That's our organic matter that's going away.
yeah.
Um, it's also it could be a good way to keep moisture in the soil too. And
Yeah.
yeah, as we are in the sands, it's a good way to make sure that we have water up in our rooting zone of the plants that we're hoping are going to be planted and taking off and using that moisture as they are emerging out of the ground. So, what is the
Mhm.
easiest way to get into planting green? We talked a little bit about cereal rye as what operators are usually planting into. What do you think is the easiest crop to start with for planting green?
Hearing from farmers across the state of Minnesota, I often hear that a really good easy button, if you want to say, is planting soybeans into cereal rye, just because there's less likelihood of that cereal rye tying up that nitrogen and it causing an issue for the soybeans. And soybeans can tolerate a little more of the temperature aspects than potentially corn.
And there's also the idea of uh, having cereal rye to scab in nitrogen and then put in soybeans, you're changing the type of crop that you're doing. Even when we talk about soil practices in general, having our different plant groups within our system. So by having cereal rye at the beginning of the season and planting soybeans into it, now we have a grass and a broadleaf in our system, a legume in our system to help kind of boost our soil biology and the way that it's functioning and
Hmm.
maintaining that structure in the soil when we're maybe driving on it when it's slightly too wet, maybe, depending what kind of season it's going to be. It does protect the soil structure a little bit as well by having that root system developed inside of it. Do
Hmm.
you normally see people making equipment changes as they're trying out planting green?
I'll turn that over to you, Jackie.
Oh,
Unless you don't want to.
I wouldn't know. My expectation is that a no-till planter is going to work best for planting green, and that's because you are going into a standing cover crop. A lot of times rye is pretty thick, so you're going to want that extra down pressure. You're going to want just a stronger planter to kind of go through all of that residue.
Yeah, and important, on any planter, having good row cleaners and closing wheels to really maximize that seed to soil contact is really important.
Do you guys know of farmers within the state of Minnesota, maybe not locally in Sherburne County, that are having really good success with planting green?
Yeah, a couple folks that come to mind, not necessarily in Sherburne County, but Dave Legvold is a farmer down in Dakota County, Northfield area, who swears by the practice. Martin Larson down in Olmsted County area, so the southeast part of the state, he's had a lot of great success and is always happy to talk to folks about that as well. And Ed McNamara, who is in Goodhue County, is also a big proponent of this practice as well. So we'll be working with those three folks on some field days, planting green field days that we have hosted back in May or June time.
Okay. And when you're talking about planting green, are you promoting spraying off the cereal rye just prior to planting or spraying it after planting?
Mm. In my job, what I have seen so far, so within the last year, year and a half, I've mostly seen farmers planting directly into the cereal rye and then spraying it immediately after. So it's
Okay.
still standing. But there are some folks who do variations of the practice and terminate it, right before they plant.
Okay.
It just depends on your level of risk and tolerance for risk.
So how about crimping?
Mm.
There are some really cool, videos that you can find on YouTube or in Facebook groups about people planting green and then they come back with a roller crimper.
Mhm. I would love to see roller crimping in the field. I missed the field day that we hosted last year, but Jackie, have you seen any farmers using roller crimper to terminate their cover crops?
So I started in September, so I have not seen any cover crop termination yet in this job or in my area. But I've definitely heard some things about roller crimping. I think that's one of the more popular choices if you're doing, for some reason, organic and reduced tillage. Um, Roller crimping gives you the opportunity to terminate the rye if you do the crimping at the right time. If you wait until enthesis, then you can basically terminate that rye through the crimping process. Um, but yeah, it can also yeah, that can be before or after you go in to do your planting green, basically.
And at least what I've seen, the information on roller crimping, it just lays down the rye into these mats, and then you need to have row cleaners or whatever is going to work best for your situation to make sure that you do have the strip cut, through that straw,
The
so that you can get emergence.
One of the nice things about crimping when you're planting green is that when you roller crimp, assuming the rye hasn't lodged already, the rye will all lay the same direction. And
Mhm.
so then if you drive basically with the laying down rye, you'll hopefully your planter will work a little bit better for you. You won't have to cross as many stems, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, and so you'll get a little bit better seed to soil contact with roller crimping ahead of planting green.
Mhm.
Mm. So, what can go wrong with planting grain?
Ooh.
I've heard of a few things.
um, yeah, so this is something to be aware of. There are risks, of course. And so just making sure you have a plan in place to overcome these risks. But some things that come to mind, by leaving these plants out in the landscape and not having any time between termination of the cover crop and planting of the cash crop, you could potentially have a green bridge or, a pest bridge. So some folks in the southeast part of the state have seen some issues with armyworms, but this isn't every year, and this really does depend on the conditions. There could be issues in terms of nutrient tie up. So if you have the cereal rye, which is a grass, which takes up a lot of nitrogen, is really great at scavenging that leftover nitrate within your soils, but it doesn't necessarily become available to the cash crop immediately. So if you're trying to grow something like corn, which has a really high nitrogen demand, just keeping that in mind and making sure you're either using some starter fertilizer or having a plan in place to try to free up some of those nutrients that have been tied up. And then also dealing with the soil moisture component. In some soils, we really want to hold as much moisture as possible. I work a lot in the southern part of the state where moisture is a really limiting factor for people getting work done. And so there are concerns about by leaving this thick residue mat, is there going to be an issue with soil moisture when it comes time to planting or actually even getting into the field?
Because of having too much.
Yeah, because that
Yeah.
moisture is a really great protective mat. So there are benefits to it, right? In terms of we've seen that it really is important for reducing weed pressure,
Mhm.
especially some of those herbicide resistant weeds. That planting green and having a thick residue cover is really great for the weed management aspect. But on the alternative side, if you keep the ground covered, it can potentially increase the amount of soil moisture that is going to be limiting for you to actually drive on the soil.
And
I think
there's been
for
Go ahead, Jackie.
I was just gonna say, I think for a lot of farms in our area in Sherburne County, um, having too much soil moisture is not super common. And so I think there can also be an opposite concern that leaving that crop in the field for a long time, especially if you have a really dry year, you can have a moisture deficit as a
Hmm.
result of leaving that cover crop too long. And so I think what these challenges kind of highlight is the importance of scouting,
Hmm.
scouting for pests, scouting for the condition of the crop in the field, and also attentive management. Just making sure that we're responding to what the weather is doing each year. If we have a really dry year, it might make more sense to terminate a cover crop a little bit earlier, as opposed to waiting until planting time to terminate.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not a one size fits all solution, and it is going to change year by year. And in those wetter years, you might have to think about termination timing a little differently than you would in a drier year. And yeah, the different soil types play a huge role, right? You guys are in sandier conditions, trying to hold moisture versus other parts of the state where we are definitely trying to get rid of it.
I think the good thing about cover crops and a lot of these soil health systems is that when we're improving our soil health, we're getting a little bit better of a balance. So, in states with really, or parts of the state with really heavy soils, we can use organic matter and soil health to kind of reduce the amount of moisture in the soil. In areas like Sherburne County, where it's very sandy, that organic matter is just as important, even though it's hard for us to build it, even though we have less of it. It's still helping our soils hold moisture, and it's still reducing nitrate leaching. It's reducing that moisture loss. Um, all of it, it's all very important. It's all very helpful, no matter where you are.
Yeah, and important to note that soil moisture is just one feature of how your soil behaves hydrologically, right? And so we want our soils to hold moisture. We want to have good water holding capacity and plant available water, but we also want our soils to infiltrate water, and we don't want water logging. And so cover crops, they do use up some moisture, that's true, but then in addition, they're adding organic matter to your soils, increasing the pore space, increasing water holding capacity, but then also decreasing water logging. So there's that push pull with cover crops, but many of the benefits in the long run will increase how your soil behaves hydrologically.
Since we're talking about cover crops, one thing that we talk about a lot is that you're not going to see a difference in 1 year. It's a multi-year process to get your soils functioning again with cover crops. If you try it one
Mhm.
year and it fails, you sometimes have issues with like your carbon nitrogen ratios. You you will do the practice 3 years in a row, and you're going to have all this residue that's too old, and it's going to be as the bacteria is going to be stealing all of your nitrogen that you're putting down to break down all this residue. But usually, it's at the year 5 time frame where things start kind of switching, where your residue is disappearing and your soil is functioning, cycling nutrients, utilizing water and holding water properly. So it's not a rapid change. It's a long game. Soil health is. You see fun things within the first 1 or 2 years. You might see some worms. You might get some impressive radishes. That's so if you're doing multi-species cover crop. But a practice like planting green, that's something that's going to take time to see your soils respond to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I don't know that I would necessarily recommend if it's your first time ever trying cover crops that you should just jump in and plant green. I think it's important to try to tailor the cover crops in your system, adaptable management plans, just given the weather and your soil conditions. But yeah, I'd second what you're saying, Miranda, about that. There are benefits that we can see early on, but it's the repeated use of that practice and stacking that practice, the cover crops and reducing the tillage. Those things combined are really when we begin to see the benefits after a couple of years.
Hmm. And if someone wants to learn more about planting green, are there any opportunities? I know that you held a series of field days about planting green in southern Minnesota earlier this summer, but is this touched on at all at the Soil Management Summit that happens in the winter?
Yeah, we will have a great lineup of speakers. So, farmers who have tried planting green and have tried using cover crops and reducing tillage, paired up with some of the university-run studies across the state. So we will have a lot of great information at the Soil Management Summit, which we are hosting January 14th and 15th of 2026 in the Fargo area. So we're co-hosting that with NDSU and U of M this year, which will be really great to have a great group of folks. And yeah, the Planting Green Field Days, we had a great run of those earlier this spring, but we're hoping to continue that maybe next year and are looking for willing producers and looking for interest across the state. So maybe we can move more up to your area this year.
And besides U of M Extension doing field days and the Soil Management Summit, there's also the Soil Health Mentor Program with the Soil Health Coalition. They're slowly but steadily moving into our area where there are farmers that are utilizing these practices successfully, and they're part of the Soil Health Mentor Program where you can go out to their farm, they can come out to yours, and you can talk about how you can make not just planting green, but any soil health practice work on your farm. And then if you haven't checked into NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, or SWCD programming, sometimes you can get funding assistance to do some of these practices like cover crops. It's not necessarily specifically for planting green, but it is for cover crops. And then I'll also say if you're at a point where you're planting green, it might be a good idea to look at getting certified with the Minnesota Agroquality Certification Program. The certification program, Will Bamier is our current certifier with MBA, and we'll have his contact information in the resources section as well. But thank you for joining us as we discuss planting green. And thank you, Bailey. Thank you, Jackie, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.